Welcome to this incredible channel, where history speaks louder than fiction. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because every week, we uncover the stories the world tried to forget. Drop in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is as you hear this voice. Let's see who's watching from the farthest corner of the world. Because tonight, we're going back to a time when freedom was a crime, and courage was punished by fire, not by accident, but by fury. Just before midnight, a group of enslaved Africans, weary, broken, but unyielding, moved silently through the sleeping city. They had no army. No guns. Only courage, and a single plan, to strike back. In moments, New York, the colony's pride, would become a battlefield. And what followed would change the city's laws, its fears, and its conscience, forever. In the early 1700s, New York wasn't a land of dreams. It was a city of merchants, masters, and misery. Behind every shining window stood someone in chains. By 1712, more than 1,000 enslaved Africans lived within the colony, nearly 1 in every 5 people. They built the streets, carried the bricks, farmed the soil that would make New York rich. But they owned nothing, not even their own names. One of them was Cuffy, a man said to be born among the Akan people of West Africa, where the sun rose over kingdoms, not plantations. Back home, he had been a hunter, a father, a free man. But here, he was property. Every sunrise began with labor. Every sunset ended with silence. But even as he worked, his eyes held something that frightened his masters: memory. He remembered what freedom felt like. Her name was Abina. No one knew her true name, it was the one her master had given her. Once, she was stolen from the Gold Coast as a child. Now, she belonged to a merchant's wife, forced to serve by day, punished by night. Her body carried the scars of a whip, but her mind carried something far stronger: hope. Every night, as she sang to her child, she whispered to herself, "They can chain the body, not the soul." The city ran on a secret engine: enslaved labor. Even churches owned slaves. Ministers preached freedom on Sunday, then sold human lives on Monday. They were everywhere, but nowhere. Invisible hands that built the homes, cooked the food, raised the children, yet could not call their own children theirs. Cuffy carved small wooden birds from scraps he found in the fields, each one a reminder of home. He said the bird could go where man could not. They both knew, they might never live to see freedom. But to die fighting, was better than dying forgotten. As months passed, Cuffy's anger became a spark. And soon, that spark spread. Others felt it, men like Kwaku, a skilled carpenter who'd once built ships, Tamba, a quiet man who lost his family to a raid, and Kwasi, who'd seen rebellion before in the Caribbean. They met in hidden corners, stables, cellars, the shadows of the sugar docks. Each meeting carried the same unspoken question: will we die as slaves, or as men? Cruelty was as common as bread. A single mistake could mean death. But cruelty has a strange effect: it hardens those it seeks to break. And in the shadows of that cruelty, something sacred began to form: unity. The enslaved, from different tribes, different tongues, began to see each other as one. Abina once dreamt of fire, not destruction, but cleansing. In her dream, the fire burned the chains but left the people whole. She woke with tears and a single word in her mouth: soon. Every revolution begins with a moment too painful to bear. For Cuffy, it came the day he watched a child, no older than 10, whipped until his back was raw. The overseer laughed. And something inside Cuffy broke. That night, Cuffy found Kwaku, Tamba, and Abina. And he said 6 words that would ignite the city's darkest hour. Tomorrow, we light their world aflame. New York in 1712 was a city split in 2 worlds, one of wealth, one of chains. By day, merchants filled the streets, selling sugar, tobacco, and rum. By night, the enslaved filled the shadows, whispering of lands far away, and dreams outlawed by their masters. The city was growing fast, too fast. Fear and greed walked hand in hand. The white colonists depended on slave labor, yet feared their very existence. And fear has a way of feeding cruelty. They gathered in silence. No written plans. No name spoken louder than a whisper. Every word could mean death. They prayed to their ancestors for guidance. To those who had crossed the ocean in chains, and never returned. Abina whispered prayer. Spirit of our mothers, walk with us tonight. Give us the courage to fly, even through fire. Their plan was simple, and suicidal. They would set fire to a building near the heart of town, draw the white colonists into chaos, and strike as they tried to extinguish the flames. It wasn't about victory. It was about vengeance. About showing the world that even the broken can bite back. But among them was fear. One man, Jacob, doubted the plan. He saw not freedom, but death. He would not betray them, not yet. But doubt is a seed, and fear is water. By day, life continued as usual. No one suspected that by nightfall, these streets would run with fire. Abina's heart was torn between love and revolution. She wanted freedom, but she also wanted to live, for her child. Her silence said what words could not: she would rather die beside him than live without dignity. They prepared not like soldiers, but like ghosts. Every step measured. Every word unspoken. They carried their tools of freedom, torches, blades, and the memory of home. They gathered beneath the moon, 23 men, 2 women, bound by one purpose. To prove that even slaves could make history bleed. Each of them knew this might be their last night alive. But there was no turning back now. They called it the night of cleansing. But history would call it something else. The New York slave revolt of 1712. Midnight was near. The city slept, unaware of the storm waiting just beyond its walls. And with a single spark, they would awaken a city. Not to freedom, but to its own reflection. The revolt had begun. The night of April 6, 1712, began like any other in New York City. The streets were quiet, too quiet. But beneath that calm, a storm was forming. A storm born of generations of pain. They gathered deep in the orchards behind the homes of their masters, a hidden patch of ground where freedom itself seemed to whisper through the branches. 19 men. 2 women. Africans, stolen from the Gold Coast, the Congo, the Bight of Benin. Each had tasted the whip. Each had buried someone they loved beneath this city's cold soil. They'd planned this for months. Every word exchanged in secret. Every stolen moment used to forge a single idea: tonight, we are no longer slaves. One man, named Kofi, a field laborer with shoulders like carved stone, held a torch. Its flame trembled in the wind. He raised it high, and then, let it fall. The blaze spread like vengeance set free. The city awoke to chaos. Slaveholders burst from their beds to see the night sky bleeding orange, the symbol of rebellion, painted in fire. The rebels struck swiftly. Armed with hatchets, knives, and stolen muskets, they cut down anyone who tried to stop them. 9 white men lay dead before dawn's first light. For one fleeting hour, they were free. Free from the whips. Free from the fear. Free from the chains that had defined their existence. But freedom, it burned too bright to last. If you're still watching right now, you're part of the few who crave the truth. The kind of truth most history books tried to erase. Before we continue, take a second to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Because there are stories like this, hidden rebellions, buried truths, forgotten voices, and you won't want to miss what comes next. As the flames consumed the city's edges, the militia rallied. White colonists, soldiers, merchants, and even boys barely grown, armed themselves with muskets and torches. They moved through the streets like hunters. The rebels fled into the woods, trying to vanish into the night, but the fire betrayed them. Their shadows flickered in the trees. One by one, they were captured. Some turned on each other under threat of death. Some, refusing to be chained again, chose fire over surrender. The next morning, the rebellion was crushed. But the smell of smoke lingered. The city was shaken to its core. And in that wind, if you listened closely enough, you could still hear them, whispering the word they died for. Freedom. When the smoke cleared over New York, the silence was louder than the fire itself. The rebellion was over, but what followed was not peace, it was vengeance. Dozens of enslaved Africans were rounded up, men and women alike. Shackled, bruised, their faces marked not with fear, but with defiance. They were locked inside the New York City jailhouse, a damp, rotting structure that smelled of sweat and death. For days, interrogations filled the air, brutal, merciless, endless. One by one, they were forced to confess, not through truth, but through terror. Some were promised mercy. None received it. On April 9, 1712, the trials began. But these weren't trials, they were performances. Every verdict had already been decided. Guilty, they declared, again and again. Some were hanged in the public square. Others were burned alive at the stake, their screams swallowed by the same city that had ignored their suffering. 21 lives, extinguished not for the deaths of 9 white men, but for daring to dream of freedom. Among them was a woman named Sarah. She was only 17. They said she helped light the fires. But when the flames touched her skin, she didn't scream. She looked straight ahead, as if staring at something beyond this world. Perhaps, freedom itself. They called it justice. But what justice punishes the enslaved for wanting what every human deserves? The New York slave revolt of 1712 didn't end with those bodies, it ended in laws. In the months that followed, New York passed even stricter slave codes. Africans were forbidden from meeting in groups larger than 3. No one could carry a weapon. No one could even mourn too loudly. Freedom had spoken for one night, and the city made sure it would never speak that loudly again. But history has a strange way of keeping echoes alive. Those who burned that night, they didn't die forgotten. Their courage passed through generations, whispering through the centuries, carried in the very soil of New York itself. They became the voices beneath the city, beneath the churches, the markets, the tall buildings that now stand on their ashes. And though history buried their names, it could never bury their message. If you're still watching right now, thank you. Because you're part of the few who believe that the past deserves witnesses. And if this story moved you, don't leave without subscribing and turning on the notification bell, because each week, we bring you stories that echo through time. If you don't want to subscribe, tell me why in the comments. What part of this story shocked you the most? Was it their courage, or the cruelty that silenced them? Remember, the past isn't gone. It's just waiting for someone brave enough to listen. They thought they had silenced the fire forever. But what no one in New York realized that night, was that the embers of 1712 were still burning, deep beneath the ashes. For every man, woman, and child executed that April, another would soon awaken to their story. Another would hear the whispers of Kofi, of Sarah, of the 19 who dared to dream. 2 decades later, 1741. New York would again tremble. They called it the New York Conspiracy Trials. Over 200 black men were accused of plotting another uprising. Dozens were executed, burned alive, hanged, or exiled. Sound familiar? They never proved the revolt existed. But maybe it didn't have to. Maybe what they feared wasn't the rebellion itself, but the memory of 1712. In 1739, the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina. In 1791, the Haitian Revolution, where the enslaved defeated empires. Each uprising, each defiance, carried the ghost of 1712 within it. But here's the twist that history rarely admits. The New York slave revolt wasn't just a story about death. It was a story about memory. About how the human spirit refuses to forget itself. Every rebellion after 1712 carried that same light. And centuries later, that fire still burns, not in the fields, but in the fight for equality, justice, and the truth of our past. Some say, if you walk through Lower Manhattan today, near Wall Street, near the old Trinity Churchyard, and you stop at night, when the streets go silent, you can still hear them. Not ghosts of revenge, but echoes of a promise. A promise that the fire will never truly die. The New York slave revolt of 1712 wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of a movement the world could never fully contain. If this story reached you, if you felt that fire, even for a moment, then don't let it fade. Subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join this community of truth seekers who refuse to forget. Drop a comment below. What part of this story shocked you most? Was it their courage? Or how history tried to erase it? Because somewhere in the silence of history, they're still waiting for us to remember. For words echo through the centuries. We wanted to be free. That's what this story, the New York slave revolt of 1712, has always been about. They didn't fight because they wanted war. They fought because they could no longer breathe in silence. Because even in chains, their souls remembered what freedom felt like. 3 centuries later, we walk the same streets they once walked, we ride the same ferries, work the same docks, live under the same sky. But their story still breathes beneath us. And maybe, just maybe, every time we demand justice, every time we speak against cruelty, every time we choose truth over silence, we honor them. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Take a second, right now, to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Because here, history isn't just told. It's felt. Every week, we uncover the hidden truths the world tried to bury, stories of courage, betrayal, resistance, and the raw human will to survive. The past isn't gone. It's buried, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. And tonight, you listened. This was the New York slave revolt of 1712. Their fire never died. It only changed hands. And now, it burns in yours.